What's up, y'all? Welcome to the show. I hope everybody out there is having an awesome day. It is Monday, February 23rd, and I have a lot to get to. So, in just a second, Mexico has officially erupted in a narco-war. I'll give you all the pictures and the videos and the backstory on that. Then, of course, we'll get to the Middle East being on the brink of an unprecedented mega-war. Right now, the U.S. is doing a buildup just outside of Iran. That's the biggest in the Middle East since the 2003 invasion of Iraq. So dangerous, dangerous times. We'll talk about that as well. We also have a Trump supporter storming Mar-a-Lago with a shotgun and getting killed by Secret Service. And I'll get into everything we know about this guy at this point. And spoiler alert, he's not Antifa, he's not trans, he's not an immigrant. In fact, he is a Trump supporter, so we'll talk about that. And then later on, we have Tucker humiliating Mike Huckabee, the U.S. ambassador to Israel. And in the process, Huckabee sparks an international crisis just in an interview. So we'll get to all the details there. And then later on, we have a look inside of Epstein's rotting Lolita Express Fredophile plane. The dark past is exposed. Wait until you see some of the things they found in there, even though it's literally sitting in a junkyard and has been for about a decade now, okay? So we'll get to that as well. And then also later on, a colossal tariff crash out from the president, who of course was just slapped down by the Supreme Court. And he is struggling. He is lashing out and having a toddler tantrum, and we'll get into all of that as well. So you guys know the deal, man. Everybody, please do me a big favor and subscribe to the channel. If there's one thing to help this channel out, that's exactly what you can do. Subscribe to the channel. Click that bell icon so you get a notification every time a video drops. You, of course, can also support the show on Patreon. Remember, this is real independent media. I've never talked to an advertiser ever. I've never done an ad read ever. I never will. I never got money from a billionaire. Never talked to a PAC or a government or anything like that. You guys support the show from the ground up. Thank you for those of you that do. So again, please support on Patreon, or you can tip with that thanks button on YouTube, or of course you can sign up for Crystal, Kyle, and Friends on Substack. That link is also below me here. And definitely go sub to the Corn's World YouTube channel. You don't want to miss what we got going on over there. Again, this week Corn is still on vacation, but we'll be back next week. So come hang out with us next week, Monday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. You don't want to miss it. All right, guys. So let's go ahead and jump right in, Ski. And there's a lot to talk about here. So take a look at this. This erupted yesterday in the middle of the day. But the New York Post says, Mexican resort town and airport under siege after army kills major Jalisco New Generation cartel leader. Okay? This is a big deal. So, El Chapo was the head of the Sinaloa cartel. He was arrested, I want to say it was about a decade ago. I believe it was 2014. And that's what's called the decapitation strategy. In other words, you go after the Kingpin, and then the theory goes, then everything breaks down, and you win the war on drugs, and you defeat the drug trade. That turns out to be stupid and wrong, because what happened when they captured El Chapo is everything got worse. Because El Chapo was the boss, and he led to some level of stability. When he was taken out, then you had different factions in the drug cartels being rivals to determine who would be the next kingpin, right? And so you had basically this massive war in the streets in Mexico because they took out El Chapo. Okay, well, out of that chapter came a number of different victors. I believe there were about 2 or 3 different victors and different heads of the drug cartels, okay? This guy right here is the most dangerous and the most violent, and all of the people in his cartel are decked out in full military gear. More on that later, by the way. So this guy, they call him El Mencho. He was captured by Mexican special forces, I believe, and then they had him. He tried to escape. When he tried to escape, they ended up killing him, okay? And that led to effectively his underlings, the other cartel members, kind of rioting and taking over various parts of Mexico. So let me show you this. We got a little video here that shows some of the damage, but you had the cartels, or the cartel, I should say, going around and lighting various cars on fire. This was like their go-to move. They hijacked some buses, they hijacked some cars of tourists, and they lit the cars on fire. And so you had in Puerto Vallarta, you had all of this smoke billowing up. And it was, kind of wild sights for people who are there at a resort on vacation looking around, people who live there and, of course, have nothing to do with the drug trade in any way, shape, or form. And basically, parts of the city have been just taken over. And the word is out that the cartel is officially targeting, members of the National Guard, members of the Mexican military. So you could see all the smoke here. And this is what it looks like. And you immediately had basically a shelter in place, bulletin for everybody who is a Western tourist who was there. And you had, basically they were like, red alert, you better hide in place because it is not safe right now. So here's another example. The CJNG cartel sets buses and buildings on fire in Puerto Vallarta after Mexican army kills cartel leader El Mencho. And you can see some of it here. Watch this. So very scary scenes here. Very scary scenes here. Arson everywhere. They're sending a message. They had a bunch of demands. I haven't seen any reporting on what the demands were, but word was out that they have demands and they wanted the government to, basically meet those demands. Also, take a look at this. Reports of gunmen actively storming the Guadalajara International Airport. And there's a number of videos coming out of the airport where you see people running out. Watch this. Look at this. So you have, for everybody just listening podcast style, you have all these people running onto the tarmac, fearing for their lives, because there were armed gunmen that stormed in to the Guadalajara airport. You also have some sort of a siren going off here. There's even videos where you see the Mexican National Guard, some of them inside the airport, running away, which never a great sign when the people who are supposed to be protecting you are running away. All right, and then we have some more. These are some pictures here. I'm telling you, I don't know the total number of how many vehicles were set on fire, but it was a lot. There were a lot. It was happening all over the city. That's what it was. And they also, how about this one, set the Costco on fire. The Costco in Puerto Vallarta was set on fire. And I'll show, here we have a 13-second video, and you can see that. Take a look. Again, you hear the alarms in the background. It's kind of hard to tell here. There's a lot of reports that Costco was on fire. This, to me, looks like vehicles outside of the Costco are on fire, but it could potentially could be both. Breaking, 25 Mexican National Guard troops were killed in Jalisco after cartel leader Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes was killed by the army. So that's El Mencho. 25 that we know of that were killed. By the way, I've seen some pictures. I've seen some videos of it. I didn't know at the time if it was real or AI. Apparently, according to this, it was real. I'm not going to show them because it is extra bloody and extra gross and extra disturbing. But that's what's happening. They're telling all the tourists are sheltering in place, and you have basically the murder of different members of the Mexican National Guard and the military. So this is a crisis. Now, of course, I can't get through this segment without pointing this out from the Rolling Stone. How the United States arms the Mexican cartels. In an exclusive excerpt from the new book, Exit Wounds, author Aiva Jusianite traces the deadly pipeline of assault weapons into the hands of organized crime. And when you see the pictures and when you see the videos of the people in this cartel, you know very quick, oh, of course they were outfitted by the U.S. because they look like fucking SWAT teams. They look like high-level branches of the military, like special forces. And these are cartel members that we're talking about here. So this has been, I hate to say it, it's been a disaster through and through. At first, there was like some celebrations because, oh, they got El Mencho. They got the guy who's like the big drug kingpin right now in Mexico. It is backfiring massively in the same way that going after El Chapo backfired massively because that led to an extended period of time of basically a cartel civil war in Mexico where a lot of people died, right? This decapitation strategy, which, the U.S. government uses, and apparently the Mexican government was using as well here. It is not the right way to go about defeating the drug cartels. In order to do that, you need to legalize, tax, and regulate drugs and put them out of business. That's what you do. You don't keep drugs illegal, basically give them a monopoly, then they get more money and more power than they ever would have in an intelligent system, and then they use that for all these horrible things. But this backfired massively. Now, there has been some debate and discussion. Just how much was the U.S. involved? CBS News reported the U.S. was directly involved. Come to find out later, what they were involved with is what's called intelligence sharing. They were intelligence sharing with Mexican authorities. But they weren't. It was the Mexican special forces, the Mexican troops on the ground that did the raid, that captured El Mencho and wound up killing him when he tried to escape after they had captured him, okay? But I'm surprised Trump hasn't already come out with a tweet trying to take credit for it. Again, it seemed like some outlets were trying to give the U.S. credit for it when it initially happened, but I'm going to tell you right now, this is not one of those things that you're going to want to take credit for because there are disastrous consequences that are already happening as a result of it. And again, I can't get over the fact how stupid this is. And by the way, let's remember, you had Trump basically saying to Claudia Sheinbaum, the president of Mexico, I'm going to go into the country. I'm going to attack the cartels. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do that, Claudia. That's what I'm going to do. And threatening over and over to bomb Mexico, to do a war with Mexico, over and over and over, to go after the cartels. And Claudia Sheinbaum said to Trump, no, don't do that. We'll handle it. And so it appears like Sheinbaum was, feeling threatened by Trump, threatening to attack her country. So she felt like, I have to take action. Now I have to go after El Mencho, because if I don't, then Trump might just come in and start doing drone strikes or air strikes or send special forces or whatever into my sovereign country to allegedly go after these drug cartels, which again would be a colossal disaster. So there was diplomatic pressure put on her, and everybody knows Trump is a psycho. Who knows what the fuck he'll do if you don't follow through with what he says. And so they followed through, and now there are disastrous consequences. So as per usual, the world under Trump is completely and utterly falling apart. This is a mess. This is a disaster. This is not the way you go about it for the 9,000th time. Because what happens now? You guys know what happens now. Now, there's going to be another cartel civil war, and they're going to fight to determine who's going to be the boss man again. And so we're going to go through that same disgusting process that we went through previously after El Chapo. They're simply not handling this in the intelligent way. Like I said, the U.S. would need to legalize, tax, and regulate drugs in order for us to try to actually beat back the drug trade here. And there is a historical precedent for this. It was prohibition of alcohol, right? When there was prohibition of alcohol, the mafia got incredibly powerful. The mafia became a powerhouse at that time because they were the only game in town. They were the only ones that were making the alcohol and selling the alcohol, so they got all the money, okay? And then when you do that, that led to a massive increase, a massive spike in violence and crime. That's what happened. And so what we learned is, when you get rid of prohibition and you legalize, tax, and regulate alcohol, that led to the destruction of the mafia, and that led to legal companies taking their place, and that led to disputes being solved in courtrooms with people wearing suits and ties, as opposed to disputes being solved in the street with guns. And it's the exact same thing with drugs. But nobody wants to state the obvious, and of course, the Trump regime is too fucking stupid to adjust and ever go down a logical path when it comes to drug policy. So here we are, and yet again, another disaster exploding when it comes to the drug cartels, when it comes to the drug war. And I feel for everybody in Mexico right now and what they're going through. And it's a real shame because Claudia Sheinbaum, the president of Mexico, has just been doing a phenomenal job. I've seen her 70% approval rating, 80% approval rating. They opened up a new high-speed train that people were loving, and it's super inexpensive, and they raised the minimum wage. When you talk about Morena, which is the political party of AMLO, who was the previous president, and Claudia Sheinbaum, they are basically like the FDR of Mexico. And they're really putting them on the map and really doing some amazing things. But I just can't help but think that this was directly under pressure from the U.S. to handle this in a militaristic way. And you're already seeing how much that fucking backfires, okay? By the way, my guess is if there wasn't Puerto Vallarta basically plunging into chaos immediately as El Mencho was killed, you would have Trump tweeting that, I took out El Mencho, I'm responsible for it, everybody give me credit. But you don't see it because now it looks like it's not going well, so of course he's going to fucking run and hide. But just a horrible, horrible update here. And let's hope everything They find a way to de-escalate, and they find a way to get back to sanity. But I don't know, man. My guess is it's going to be a rough ride there for quite a while, because now there's going to be cartel wars in the street to determine who's going to be the next El Mencho. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.